Hello, friends, and welcome to today's episode of Booked. I still haven't worked out where to look on the screen because I've changed my camera and it's now in a different location. So I'm like, do I stare up there? Do I stare down here? Either way, it's going to look creepy. I'm joined today by the lovely Kara Dobias. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here and talk about my poetry and being an artist.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Honestly, I read your collection yesterday in bed. Because I have so many things to read. I tend to read them like the day before, which is helpful because then I remember things. Um, and there was some moments where I was like, "Don't cry, don't do it," and then I was like on the verge of tears in a good way because it really, really got to me. And there were moments where I was like, "This is about me." It was weird. It was a weird experience, but um, yeah, I really appreciate you being here today, and I'm excited to dive into your artistic endeavors and your work. So, before I ramble on about nonsense, because I can feel myself going down that road, could you introduce yourself? You don't have to say your name again, and tell us a little bit about your work.
Yeah, well, thank you again so much for that feedback. That I think as an author and an artist is to be writing about myself, but to hear from an audience member, oh, that's not my story, but it also feels like it is. That's the crux of it all, right? Anyway, so hi everyone. Yes, I'm Kara. I'm a poet, so we're going to be talking about my poetry book live. I also dabble in other things. I was a theater major in college, so I come from a performance background, a singer as well. I studied opera for a couple years, so there's a fun fact for everyone. And so I've enjoyed kind of bringing all these different parts of myself into my work, as we'll probably talk about throughout this interview.
Mhm.
I approach my poetry from the lens of an artist in a fine arts background, so there are different motifs in terms of where I got my inspiration or paintings that I actually have within the book. So yeah, that's a little intro. I think we should get to it.
That's fine. So, yeah, I mean, I can see. I said this before we started recording. I don't have enough knowledge to know what poetry structurally is good. I don't know what style of poetry you used. I just looked at it from the perspective of you're a human, share your emotions with everybody else. Which is this is such a vulnerable book. This is such a vulnerable collection, and I find that poetry largely is, especially if it's like introspective or if you're using it to process things. Because I believe you said in the forward um, that you wrote this in a difficult time of your life and it helped you to process things, and then over that period of time you realized that if you shared this with people then it might help them to sort of acknowledge what's going on with them and to sort of feel seen. And I'm such a sucker for stuff like that. I'm such a sucker for it. I'm like, let's share our trauma, because then when we feel like everything's going terribly and we can see that other people have experience those things and come out of it actually okay, if not stronger, it's such an inspiration and it helps us to keep going. Why did you pick poetry as an outlet?
Great. And I resonate with all of that. Um, I think for me, I had always written throughout my life.
Mhm.
I think I had done kind of the journal sort of structure, but I also just always leaned towards poetry. And for this particular work, I felt like poetry was the best mode in terms of processing all of the heavy emotions that I was feeling.
Mhm.
I think language is the first thing that I tend to go towards in terms of my creative outlet.
Mhm.
Um, it's sort of how my brain works. I'm just like constantly thinking about things sort of in prose.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I was kind of, as I was like thinking about this interview before coming on, I was thinking about how, and in line with the theme of the book, they're just being alive. I mean, not to refer to the title, but just in general sense, like being alive, there is so much poetry to it, right? All of the things that we go through, the heartbreaks or the love that we experience, or just all of the degree of the highs and the lows.
Mhm.
I think that my way of processing all of that was through a poetic lens. So pulling out moments from my life and then translating that into language and then packaging that within a poem so that you kind of got that glimpse into my life.
Mhm.
And it kind of served as a way for me to commemorate some of the things that I wanted to remember in a positive way, but then to see myself through the things that were not so great. And I think that's something I'm really proud of the book, is that if I didn't write what I wrote, I wouldn't be able to be the version of myself that I am now. And so I think like poetry was the path out of the really challenging things that I was dealing with, but it was a way to alchemize those things and to take lessons. I had been on a call recently with another author, Cheryl Strayed. She wrote Wild. And she said on the call I attended was that it's not our job to avoid the pain in life. Like, that's inevitable. We all go through it. But it's our job to find the lessons within it and to use what we can from those experiences to learn more about ourselves and come out the other side. And then hopefully, you know, translate that to other people. Like you said, it's like, I went through this thing, I'm talking about it. And so now someone else can pick up my work and be like, oh, okay, I'll get through too. Which I think was always sort of the impetus for the work, and something I thought a lot about as I was writing was, I feel really alone in these things, but I also know that I'm not. And yeah, so it's just really great to hear that that has translated.
Yeah, it seems to be a very good mode of connecting with people, because the beauty about using something like poetry is that it is largely, the way that you've presented it anyway, very succinct and impactful. So you're able to get across a lot of emotion and a lot of narrative without using like a novel's length of words. And for some people, they need to process things like that. But it sounds like just getting it on the page and making it like art instead of pain was probably a really good move for you in terms of processing those things. So Sarah did ask a question. Hello, Sarah, and I see you're there too, Grant. Sorry I missed you. I got excited about asking questions. So did you feel like you actively picked poetry, or that you are just more inclined to it in general? And do you read a lot of poetry?
I do read a lot of poetry. I think that I've always been drawn to quotes from people. So whether that came from poetry or that came from a larger body of work. I mean, I remember in high school, I literally had a journal where I would print out like quotes from like Instagram or like any other place, Pinterest, you know, that I could find. And I would actually paste it in the journal. And they were all things that I was feeling at the time, you know, as a teen, as we all do. And I'm like, okay, like this person was able to put into words exactly how I'm feeling. And that I found comfort in that. So I think for me, like poetry was a way for me to do that as well. And yeah, and I don't know. I think I just have a natural inclination to it. I'm just thinking of like, I tend to speak sometimes very poetically, not meaning to, and my friends will call me out on it. They're like even like I like there's like a poem in the book where like one of the lines literally came from a conversation I was just having with a friend, and I just said something, and my friend was like, just kind of poked fun of me in a loving way of how dramatic it sounded. But then I was like, wait, that's actually like a really good line. And also just another like tidbit story. The reason that I even decided to share and write alive was because I was out with a group of friends and I wanted to commemorate that time with them. It was just a night that I was just really present. I felt really seen. I felt really loved. And I wrote a poem and I sent it to them. And they were like, you should share this. Like, you have a voice. And that really was kind of also the impetus of like, okay, maybe there is something to it. And then I did share it. And then I got that reaction of like, oh, I can relate to this. Oh, this is really beautiful. And so, yeah, I think it just kind of naturally unfolded as a way for me to connect with people, which is always what I'm trying to do through my art.
It's always nice when you try something out and the reception is really, really warm. And it sounds like, as well as reading the acknowledgements in this collection, you've got a really good support system and that you've got really strong connections with your friends and your family. So I imagine that was incredibly helpful, even in the processing of, you know, going through these emotions, because when you self-analyze and you try and work out, you know, why is this thing painful and how can I make my way through it? And, you know, what am I feeling? It's really tiring. It's like super, super, super draining. So I can imagine in my mind when I was reading this, I imagine you like sat in bed wrapped up in a duvet, like squirreling away on a notepad. I imagine you probably did it completely differently, but I just imagine you going, I need to get these feelings out. What did that look like? Did you sit down and you were like, right, I'm going to write a poem about this thing? Or did you just, I don't know, process things and write random lines down? How did your composition work?
Yeah, so it does tend to differ by poem. Kind of that I need to get this out actually was how the title poem Alive came to be. It was a night that I was just feeling misunderstood, and I was like, I need to explain myself in this very specific way to feel seen. And I had my journal next to my bed, and I just wrote it in one sitting. And that ultimately became kind of the guiding light of the whole book and the premise of the book of like, this is what I need to do to feel alive and in my life and in control of my life, which was, you know, creating work and being an artist. But yeah, I'm laughing because I'm thinking of the most recent piece I've been working on, which because it's a more in-depth piece, like I was doing historical research for it. Like that's how in-depth we're going. I had pages all over my desk, open notebooks, like going back and forth between kind of being like, oh, that's a great line, writing it down. So that's a little bit more of a mad woman image. And sometimes it looks like that. Like literally sometimes I find that some of my best lines come to me when I'm not trying to force them. Like sometimes I'll be driving and then I like, you know, use the voice memo to myself for later, or, you know, like working out sometimes. That's a random time that like things will come to me. Just like those moments where I guess your mind is disengaged in a way and it's like things come through. And then if I'm near a notebook, I'll grab a notebook. If I'm near my phone, I'll put them in my notes app and come back to them later. So that process kind of changes. Sometimes I'm able to sit down and really dive into the work and the poem kind of flows. And other times it's something that I have to return to again and again. And then also in that, like figuring out for myself, okay, is this a poem that wants to even be written and seen through, or maybe I scrap it and I go in a different direction, which has also happened in some of my work.
So is it something that you work on daily? Is it part of your scheduling? Do you have to make time for it? How does that work?
More recently, well, okay. When I was writing Alive, yes, because I did end up, you know, as I was in the process, I was sharing on social media of like, this is where I am and this is what I did, or like, now we have the poem titles, or like, here's a short film that I made to advertise it, right? Like I was keeping people informed in the process. And I felt like the more that I revealed that the book was a thing and the expectation was like, okay, so when do we get it? I had to really kind of create more structure around it for myself of like, okay, I want to have everything edited by this time. I want, you know, everything formatted by this time. So I was definitely more regimented in that sense. In terms of the creative process, I find that I work best late at night, honestly, when it's quiet and I know that, and I think that's the thing for a lot of artists, right? Like, you know, that it's not the normal working hours of the day. You're not going to be disturbed. Like you can really just like be with yourself and your thoughts, but not in a scary way, hopefully.
Depends on the person, I think.
Way. And so, so there are times that I'm like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write this. I also I found for myself that there's two modes that I write in. There's one where I know where I'm a little bit more in my head and I'm a little bit more structural about it. And I'm like kind of trying to figure out in that way. And then there's the side where I'm just really feeling into it emotionally. So I feel that like I can do my best work when I have that emotional well within myself to give to the work. If I'm burnt out, if I'm just like emotionally overwhelmed, then I'm like, I just can't. It doesn't feel healthy at this moment for me to feel into these emotions and write this poem. When I was writing things that were for me to process the heavy emotions, that was just kind of like, let's get it all out. We're not self-editing and no one has to see this. If I decide no one has to see it, right?
Yeah, I get that. And I'm glad that you're able to recognize when to protect yourself, but when you also have to face like the difficult side of things, because using art in whatever form it is as a form of therapy, because that's what this appears to be, is dangerous, but also very, very useful, especially if you are more creative, because there are examples of people using art as therapy that are able to like bring stuff out of them that they never would be able to do with simply just using talk therapy. So I'm glad that you've been able to find this thing. There is a line, I can't remember whereabouts it is, but it says, "The more I wrote, the more I healed." And I think that definitely seems to be a theme throughout this work. The It was very it felt linear at points, and then at other points I was like, oh, she's dipping again, because it wasn't like everything's bad and now I'm okay again. It was very realistic in its like introduction of like, what is this thing, and like, here's some heartbreak, but here's me getting stronger, and here's a bit more heartbreak. And it was just interesting to see how you'd structured the order in which you presented these works. So I don't know if you intended for them to be read in order, but did you, was that by accident? Was that by design? How hard did you have to think about the structure of this collection?
Yes, so the structure was definitely intentional.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of ways that you can choose to structure a poetry book. I know that some poets will break it down into chapters that have a specific theme. I wanted mine to be a little bit more, feel a little bit more linear, or feel like this overarching narrative, though not everything happened at the same point in my life. I just think thematically, the way that I was able to organize it, that was the way that made the most sense to me. What I did do is basically, when I decided, okay, I'm going to write a book, I had no idea what the book was going to be. It was just kind of like, I'm going to write a book. It's going to be a poetry book. I'm going to write what I need to write. And then I reached a natural stopping point where I'm like, okay, I think I have enough. I feel good. And then went through, compiled all the poems, put all the poems into categories, and then from the categories kind of shuffled them again. And then it became like that arc that you kind of see throughout. And I think I guess I kind of did that emotionally. It's hard to say because I'm so close to the work, right? Like, yes, it was intentional.
Yeah.
And I think, knowing the stories behind it, I guess, yeah, that's interesting as an audience member that you felt that it was like almost mirrored that like healing arc that isn't linear. And I think that's true too. As I was working through it, there were times where I felt like, okay, things are good. I'm feeling like myself. Then I got my heart broken. Okay, things are not so good right now. Okay, now I'm healed again and things are good. So I guess it does kind of follow that. And I guess it follows the natural arc of anyone who's finding themselves through the different relationships in their life or the different things in their environment, right? It's this process that ebbs and flows.
For sure. And it was interesting to see your personal development throughout these experiences, and how you were finally like, do you know what? I'm okay with who I am. And if you don't like that, then that's not my problem. And I really liked that, because I was like, oh man, I hope she's okay. Because halfway through, I thought, she's going through the ringer. This is awful. Not awful as in bad work, awful as in awful experiences.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
there was a line. If I'm too much, nobody is asking you to stay. I was like, yeah, fuck them. I just loved it, and there was a lot of sort of female empowerment stuff in there that I really enjoyed. Specifically, I need to remind myself of the names of the poems. 1 second. My particular favorites. I'm going to give you my top 5. I can't count. I did this for 5. This means 5. Okay, was 11, because that resonated with me in a very, very painful way. Different ages, but same experience. Still here. That was rough. In a good way. Any negative words that I'm using are because they like made me sad, but that was the point. Atlas, Unapologetic, and Female Divinity. These were my top favorites. I had to pick my favorites. I know you probably don't have particular favorites because you're not supposed to. Were there any that you found particularly that were either the most healing or that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. two, actually, well, three of your favorites were three that I think were the most healing, but also kind of like very difficult, not difficult to share, but I was very aware of sharing them, right? So Still Here, 11, and Female Divinity, just because of the subject matter, right? I knew that I was being very vulnerable. I knew that I was sharing these very intimate glimpses into my life and mental health and relationships. But I knew that it was important to share them because I knew that I wasn't alone in them. And so I think for that reason, I'm really proud of those, because I think I'm at a point too now in my creativity. Like, Alive definitely was me finding my voice. It was, I had, as I mentioned in my intro, like coming from a performance background where you're playing a character for so long, and stepping away from that and then creating a body of work that's literally about my life and me. It was a really great exercise in figuring out, okay, what do I want to say, and what do I feel comfortable with people knowing about me, and maybe I don't feel entirely comfortable because it's vulnerable, but I feel like it's important. And I think that I'm at a point in my creativity where I've met so many other female writers who have been so brave in their writing and they are so committed to telling the truth about their life that it's emboldened me to even go deeper and to just be honest about being human and what that means, right? Like, I'm never going to be one to do the toxic positivity, like, and I think that was something I had to work through too with the book, was like, you don't want to be like, hey, I'm not doing okay, right? But I have a line about that. Like, what if we were honest when we said it's okay to not be okay? Because I think that's something we all throw around, but like really allowing ourselves to be like, I'm here right now. I'm going to be okay. And it's okay to let people maybe know, because then people can, come give you the love you need and help you through it. And also then you're a guiding light for other people going through it as well. So I think for that reason, I'm proud of those, just because I think it was an exercise in me being brave as an artist and a person. Creatively, I love my poem, Joan. I worked on that poem for 5 months. It is a poem, for those who haven't read the book. Joan is a poem in which I used Joan of Arc as a metaphor for my relationship, which out of context, you might be like, why would you do that? And, and I think that actually I now have like kind of like a framing for it to kind of better describe. I read a book recently called Never Play It Safe by Chase Jarvis. He's a photographer and a creative entrepreneur. And he was talking about, if we want to push ourselves creatively, different things that we can leverage in our life. And one of the things that you said as a lever is constraints. So constraints that we put on our creativity to get our brains to think about what we want to express in a different way. So in that way, I had been writing a completely different poem about that relationship. And I got to a point with it of like, this doesn't feel like it's saying anything original. It's sounding kind of like not as empowered as I want it to be. And so then using Joan of Arc kind of became a constraint or a framing device for me to do that. Also, going back to the theater, I had always wanted to be a period drama actress. And I was called Joan of Arc, or referred to Joan of Arc in my essence. Literally in my phone case, this is Joan of Arc, a famous painting that's in my book. And so it related to that relationship dynamic I was writing. I kind of used that as a way to express that feeling.
Sorry, I'm getting a spam call through my computer. My apologies. Am I back? That was awful. That's never happened to me before, and that scared the bejesus out of me at the worst time, because you were sharing your thoughts with me. I'm so sorry. Please continue.
Okay. I think I finished my thought on that. It was just a little context. No, it's okay. A little context about why I'm proud of that piece. It also just goes along with what I wanted to do throughout the book, which was using this imagery of fine art with paintings. That was kind of the cover idea.
Mhm.
I wanted to kind of turn myself into a painting.
It's stunning.
So thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
In fact, let me
Yeah.
put the QR code up for your website, because that will show us the front cover for the
Yes.
live as well. It's stunning. I love the composition. It's very
Thank
moody.
you. Yes.
Yeah, it really fits well with it really fits well with the whole mood of the collection. I just laughed at Sarah being mean to me. I do know how to count. I just don't know how many fingers I have. Okay, that's the only issue.
It's okay. She was very overwhelmed by the poems that she wanted to share were her favorites, and it happens to the best of us.
Yeah. I was scared I was going to get it wrong. One question I saw from Grant that I don't want to skip past because I don't like people to feel ignored. Have you ever attempted a haiku?
Probably in elementary school when we learned the structure of a haiku. And that's an honest answer. I haven't,
Yes.
I haven't kind of, yeah. I mean, maybe the next book will have some haikus, but yeah, I think, and what you had mentioned at the beginning, like not knowing about poem structures in the traditional sense, I feel like I kind of have, because I've been asked about this too, in terms of like the structure of my poems and where I put line breaks. I go about it very intuitively, and just feeling into it. And that's kind of how I structure the poems. Relating back to the Joan poem that I shared, or was talking about, that is, I believe, a 5-page poem, right? So some people might have qualms with that, of like a poem has to be this length. And I said, no, because this is what the poem wants to be. And I felt like 5 pages was what it needed to encapsulate what it was saying. And I felt like it wasn't too long. If I felt like it was too long, I would have cut it back. But yes.
Yeah, if you're using art as a form of expression, to put constraints on yourself is doing yourself a disservice, because if you're trying to fit yourself into a box, especially with the messaging that you have behind a lot of your work, if you're pushing yourself into a box, you are not doing the right thing for you. So yeah, screw those people that say that it should be any shorter if they do. One thing that you said earlier about some peers sort of inspired you to start sharing your work. Before the recording, I did mention that your work really reminded me of a poet of the name Donna Ashworth, and there was a quote from her work that made me think of your work, and it was, "When you embrace your own fears, someone watching finds their way." And it definitely feels like this relates to this collection and how you go about sharing your art with people. I just wanted to share that because I thought it just made me think of you.
Thank you. And that's, yeah, I think that's kind of an undertone of the work, both for myself and the reader, is you get to redefine yourself as many times as you want. You get to break the mold of what you were told that you needed to be. And I think that's kind of the point. I think that's kind of, the essence of being alive, is that you're going to go through different periods of your life that show you a different facet of yourself. You're going to have relationships that mirror something about yourself that you needed to see, or you didn't realize that you needed to see, that was there all along. And that's going to change you. And it doesn't have to look pretty. It doesn't have to look any other way. I think that's something I had someone tell me recently, because I tended to, when I was talking about my life, and it also relates to my artistry, use the words like traditional and untraditional path. And I think artists often get thrown into the category of like, well, you're not on a traditional path. Like, you're doing this thing that we can't define. And the comment that was made to me was, your path is your path, and it's good because it's yours. And maybe that's simple, but I think it's something that bears repeating. And I think that that's kind of what I was trying to like really conceptualize for myself in writing Alive, and still in my life. So write the 5-page poem if that's what you're being called to do.
Well, yeah. I just want to quickly say, I've seen a couple of Instagram comments. This is the first time that 2 of us are streaming on Instagram, and the comments aren't coming through to the mainstream. So if you can go to @bookedpod on YouTube. If you want to copy and paste those comments in, then I'll make sure that they get on the show. But I can't connect the two for some reason. So we have another comment here from YouTube because that's working. So you mentioned a Joan of Arc poem and working on a historical piece. Do you often find inspiration in history? Are there particular women poets or historical figures who have influenced your work most?
Yes. I think I find inspiration from anywhere. I'm part of, so I mentioned to you before the call. So I'm part of a international poetry group of women called Poems and Power. And the structure of it is that we learn different women throughout history and their lives, and we can, write prompts from their life. And it's just been a really amazing experience to be a part of. And I think that kind of positioned myself towards looking to other women in history and seeing their lives. It kind of, that surprised me or maybe not surprised, but I didn't go into writing Alive with the thought of like, yes, there are going to be these multiple poems about these women in history. It kind of just happened in the way of like, I saw something that was fitting. And I guess that was a constraint that I had placed for myself of like, this will be a very interesting lens to write this poem. So the first poem that I wrote in the book that kind of used that model was Portia, using the character of Portia from The Merchant of Venice. I had gone to the Met Museum in New York and I had seen a famous painting of her character, and I was reading the little placard and it said something that reminded me of how I felt in my relationship. And I was like, I think there's something here. I'm going to use this as a metaphor again for for this dynamic. And then Joan happened. I'm writing another poem currently called Elizabeth Siddle. And she is another artist in history. She was an artist, a poet, and a model. And so I can relate to her on the facets of obviously being a poet, but I model as well. And so I've been using her relationship with her husband, Dante Rossetti, who is another famous artist, part of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood in London, famous arts movement there. And their relationship and this idea of exploring the artist-muse relationship and love and creativity and intimacy. And so, yeah, that was just, again, like, I think for me, it's more of, I can think very abstractly sometimes and have very large feelings that aren't always easily distilled into, I'm happy, I'm sad, right? And when I'm experiencing that, or it is a more complicated relationship dynamic, I think those are the moments that I reach for something that's a little bit more concrete or a little bit more grounding. So in these instances, it's been the lives of these women and facts about their life that just happen to relate to things in my own. And I think that's really cool too, because I think the amazing thing about art and writing is that it gets to span generations, years, right? Like we can look to artists from the past and find something that we connect to, because it all just speaks to an expression of our shared humanity, which is something I was exploring in Alive. So that feels like I talked about that for a very long time.
Okay,
that's where the inspiration came from.
No, that's great. That's great. I flip flop in my mind between like everybody's unique and everybody's the same, and I feel like people don't have necessarily totally unique experiences, because there's always going to be something that someone can relate to in some kind of way. So whether it's like shared experiences that people have said, I'm going to share this with the world, like you with your collection of poetry or any art that you produce, and then there are going to be like reports about history that those people didn't necessarily share on purpose. It's just an account of what happened. And it's just interesting how those things come together, because I was thinking about it as you were talking. And I imagine, like, what if we spoke to these people now, if we had like a time machine and we were like, yeah, we've got books about you. That'd be really weird. It'd be a really weird thing, because your vulnerability is on purpose. You're choosing to do that. And then we have all these people that from like hundreds of years ago that didn't get a choice, but we're using them as an example anyway. And my mind was just like going and cartwheel to make that make sense in my head. I think that would
definitely.
But yeah, it's just interesting concept.
Yeah. I think that that's something I find really interesting. I've always been very interested in history as well, is like the point at which the past and present can enter into dialogue with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's something that I explore in these poems, right? And thinking about these women, it's like we have these recounts of their lives. Maybe we're lucky to have a direct account in their own writing about how they felt about their life.
Mm-hmm.
But what would they really say if we were able to sit down with them now? And I think that that's something that I really just connected with Elizabeth Siddal, is that in art history, she's often just painted as the passive muse. She modeled for several of the artists in the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. But what's often lost is that she was a writer. She wrote poetry, beautiful poetry that you can find online. And she painted herself, and she was shown in spaces that women artists, if they were creating work at that time, often didn't have access to, right? And she's just often put in relation to her husband, who was, the artist that is often portrayed in art history, or just that, she was a pretty thing, but she had her own world going on. And I think I just really feel into that, as someone who has modeled, but also, as an artist myself, and as a woman.
Us women having feelings and stuff.
And you know what that makes me think of is when you quoted my line about, like, if I'm too much, no one's asking you to stay. Like, I think that was part of the dialogue in Alive too, is like, so many times I've just been told, like, I was too much, or I was too emotional, or just like I was so deep. And I think what's been really amazing about this work is that, like, part of the repeated feedback I get is that it's deep, but like people are actually appreciating that, and they're like, oh, thank you for being deep, thank you for being vulnerable, thank you for sharing that. And I think that was part of my own self-perception that I was rewriting, was that, okay, feeling a lot, it does not have to mean you're too much, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Actually, that is like my access point to connecting with people. That is the thing that makes me a good writer and a good artist. And I mean, it's in I'm forgetting the name of my poem. You mentioned it as one of your favorites.
Which one?
Female. Oh wait, no, you said
Female Divinity.
Female Divinity.
Unapologetic.
Oh no, okay. I'm misremembering my own poems.
Okay.
It's in My Body Belongs to Nobody, the last poem in the book. That was a message I was really trying to drive home in that poem of, women, take up space. Take up space. You're going to be told not to, but take up space.
Yeah, it's an interest. I personally have this like weird relationship with how I want to be perceived by people, or how I want people to take me. And there's this really strong part of me that's like, well, I'm not a product. So if you don't like who I am as a person, if I'm too much, if I'm too loud, if you don't like my horrible laugh or whatever, part of me is like, well, if you love me, then it doesn't matter. Those things are just part of the package. But if people don't like it, I have to remind myself, like, you're never going to get on with everybody. But women and men and everyone in between, you're not a product. If people don't get on with you, then they just don't get on with you. We don't have to talk to each other, and that's fine. But it can be as simple as recognizing that you don't get along with people, whether you're the person that doesn't like that person or the person that isn't being liked, that you don't have to interact with one another, because there are millions of us. So yeah, it again made me think about, like, okay, do I actually care about people's perceptions of me? And that's something that I have had to deal with recently. So it was like really, I really had to think about how I was processing stuff for myself now. And I still don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out in my head, but it's just interesting again to be able to see people reconciling with their own experiences. And seeing you speak about these things so confidently makes me feel better, because I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's going to be me when I figure it out for myself. So yeah, it's nice. I love art. It's so cool.
Isn't it?
So cool. It's so cool.
It is.
So an Instagram message that didn't come through that's come through now. Thank you so much for joining us, Holmes. Ellen Holmes is a fantasy writer. She's very awesome. So she said it was very cool that your work resonates with so many people. I agree. I think that's very cool.
It is. It's honestly, it's just the best feeling ever.
Mm-hmm.
That's yeah. I need to take a moment with that because that means a lot. It really does. And I think that's my purpose. It's all that I want to do as an artist is to share my truth. And what you're saying made me think of something I'd written in my notes here about like, not everyone has to like you and they're not going to. And I mentioned earlier, the author, Cheryl Strayed had said this when she was writing her book. That was something she realized. She's like, I'm not writing so everyone likes me. I'm writing to be credible. And as long as I'm credible, then I feel like I did a good job. And I did my job as a writer in this particular piece of work. And when she said that, I was like, oh, yeah. That's exactly, I think, a place that I was getting to with Alive. It's a place I think I continue to kind of go back and forth between. But I think that it's like when you get over thinking about having other people in the room with you when you're writing of like, well, what is this person going to think? What is this person going to think? This person's going to whatever. Not like that I wrote this, that then you begin to self-censor. And the moment that you begin to self-censor, you're not showing up to your work as yourself totally authentically.
Yeah.
And I think it's a process, both, personally in our lives, but also as an artist when you're discovering your voice. And, every artist is going to want to pursue their work differently. I really resonate and really love, especially the women writers who go there. They let themselves show the full extent of their humanity, good, bad, and ugly, right? Because we're all having those experiences, whether we're sharing them publicly or not. And I think the more that we can be honest, the more, like, for me, when I read work like that, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like, okay, we can just like let our guards down and we can all like, we just become these like really beautiful mirrors for one another. And I think that's really what I want to be, especially, like I said, coming from that place of like having a lot of times been told I was too much or, I should tone it down or what have you. It's like, that's not my nature. My nature is to be very loving and very open and to be very honest about my life. And art and poetry, I think that's why I gravitated towards poetry, because it's so it is the place where your emotions are welcome, right? And I think that's my gift to the audience, is letting you into my life.
Well, thank you. One of the questions that I ask every guest is, what is your idea of success? And I feel like you've answered it. It seems to me like you feel successful and that what you set out to achieve has been achieved. Do you set yourself measurable goals on top of this, or is it all based on how it makes you feel in terms of your own personal satisfaction?
I mean, I definitely have, I think, the normal metrics that any artist would want, of like, oh, I want to endeavor to sell this many copies of my work, those types of things. And all of those are great. And I'm always going to strive for those things and strive for those external like accolades. But like I said, like, I think the fact that, I wrote this book, it helped me in the way that it did. And now I'm hearing over and over that people read it and they're like, it almost made me cry. Oh, I saw myself in this. Like, this really touched me. The fact that I've sold copies in multiple countries is amazing. Like, that's like, oh, wow. Like, my work has spread. That's incredible. But yeah, I think it's just to know that, for the amount of time that you've decided to spend with my work, I was able to kind of cultivate a space where you feel like you can show up, you can have whatever emotional reaction you're going to, you can, maybe do your own internal processing as you're reading, and you allow yourself that, like, that's incredible. And I think when I think of myself as a consumer, anything that I've read, art that I've been drawn to, has all been part in facilitating that process for myself. So to be able to be the one doing that for others, that feels really amazing.
it's always nice for me to see people actually achieving a measure of success for themselves, because it's difficult for me to watch people give themselves unachievable goals or unrealistic goals instead of just enjoying the fact that they've been able to produce a thing that at least one person likes, or that they've actually done it, they've finished the thing, they've got it out there. Whether or not anybody reads it is like superfluous, depending on what your goal is or whatever. But yeah, I'm always very pleased to hear when people are like, I'm doing it, man. Before I get on to I've already warned you about the Womble question. I'm going to save that for last, I think. That'll be the cherry on the wobbly cake. But another question that I do like to ask people is, if you were to go back to the point when you first started expressing yourself through the written word, whether that was when you were really young, when you first started writing this collection, what advice would you give yourself to make things either easier or to get the best out of the situation?
I think it would just be to trust my intuition, trust that if I'm writing from a place of authenticity, it's going to attract the people that it needs to. And I think that's something that I kind of discovered along the way as well. Maybe not before when I was writing, before this collection. I think it was like through this collection that I really let myself be that vulnerable and authentic, and really kind of tune out everyone else. I think I still sometimes come to like my journal with these very personal feelings, and I sometimes write as if someone's like gonna read it when no one is. And so I think I'm trying to just be like, just write it. Like, no one's, this isn't the next book. This is just you writing. So it's like when you go from that place of like editing and knowing you're putting your work out into the world and people will read it, I think you have to kind of like retrain and be like, okay, now no one has to see this. You can just write. And I think when you allow yourself to do that, then you get to the heart of what you really want to say. So yeah, the advice is just be you. Just be you, however that looks.
So you briefly mentioned it earlier, and I remember you mentioning it when we did an audio test, and I completely forgot to ask about it. So you have produced some like are they short films in relation to the collection? Can you tell us about those and why you did that?
Yeah, so those are on my website. They're on my Instagram. Basically, I think I had enjoyed working across artistic mediums. And so working behind the page and poetry and writing was the catharsis that I was looking for. And I think that in order to take it one step further, I just had the idea that it would be really amazing to create a visual alongside it that people could connect to. And I did it kind of also like as a marketing tool. And so the first thing that I did was I recorded myself reading the preface of the book, and I made that a voiceover. And then I had a friend who's a cinematographer who filmed me, and we just filmed a bunch of raw footage. I kind of had an idea of what it was going to be, but not really. And then in post, I sat with all the clips and the audio I had recorded, and I edited it all together. And it kind of just was a way to introduce people before the book came out. It was my kind of pre-launch video a year prior to the book coming out of what the book was going to be. And yeah, it was just another way to feel into the world of Alive. It was another way for me to challenge myself artistically. I realized that I really do have an interest in film and kind of also being part of that. And yeah, so that's why I did that.
I imagine that's fantastic for your resume as well.
Yes. It has helped. Yes, I have used it as a portfolio piece.
That's very cool. Yeah, seeing that as like an actual, I mean, you lived these things. It's not like they were fictional from what I can tell anyway. But it's an interesting thing to think about for me, where you lived the experience, you shared the experience, and then you made it live again. how much of that did you try and rein in and polish, or did you keep it quite raw and, you know, emotional and feelsy? Because I haven't watched them, and now I'm going to as soon as this is finished. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of what you see, kind of, it's not. I think I initially had the thought of it being a little bit more literal. And then I kind of went more in the space of it being more the emotion that I was inviting people into. And so the films themselves use a lot of nature imagery. And the reason that I did that is because alongside writing during this period of my life, nature and being out in nature was something that was really healing. So that kind of became the motif that I used. Yeah. And so the last film that I made, that one I feel like was a little bit more depiction of going through that process of writing and sitting with these emotions. And then at the end, you kind of see that I'm happy and that I'm holding the book. And the book that I'm holding is the book that's used in the very first video that I released. So in the first video, the opening is that you see me, it has the title of the book, and then you see me signing my name. And then in the last video, you see me walking towards the camera holding that same book. So it's like you've gone through this process from the preface to the book has been written and all the things have been alchemized, and I'm walking away with the book. So it's not like a literal depiction. I think I would have needed a little bit more production to do that. But it's more, I think it's more just about feeling into the world of a lot.
It's a lot of fun. I hope that I see more people doing things like that, because it just makes it a bit more, I don't know, exciting, I think, and accessible, because you're potentially the people that you want to reach to share these things with might not necessarily find poetry to be accessible, because I feel like there is this, whether we all feel it or not, there's this like accessibility thing with poetry where only like certain types of people will read it, and sometimes people that will actually find the messages most beneficial won't necessarily go for that as their first thing. So hopefully things like that, you know, introducing it in different mediums will help to bring in those people and be like, it's for everybody, it's not just for these types of people. That's very cool. Sarah's asked her question. Okay.
I saw.
So before the show, I asked you to Google what a womble looks like. What I've told you about them is the extent of their complications. Now, the question that Sarah has asked, for those who have only seen this show, this if this is the first episode that you've ever seen, Sarah Arnu, author, likes to ask questions about wombles. If you're not sure what that is, please do give them a Google, watch some clips. She says, Kara, I have heard a rumor that you're an operatic singer. If you were to sing an operatic duet with a womble, which one would it be? She's not going to know what the different wombles are. Or do you mean what would the song be?
Did you mean? Yeah. I think she's asking. People are going to be so confused with no context, because it's a British cartoon.
It's like
to my understanding,
so we don't. Thing. Let's
it's a little cartoon character for those listening at home.
We'll
that I'm apparently doing a duet
with the song. Yeah,
with the song. No, like I'm thinking about. I've only ever like as I was practicing opera arias that they were all just solo pieces. So can my answer be that the womble would just have to be on the side? The womble can be in the scene, but their purpose is to just be watching me
I love
sing.
that.
How's
a womble audience.
There you go.
We could probably arrange that if you would like to. That's fine. That's a great answer. I think a womble would make a great audience member. I feel like I need to do like a PSA about wombles before the show, so that people understand what's being asked. It's always risky when the person's not British, because usually a Brit would be like, I know exactly what that is.
I'm going to have to ask my friend in London now if he knows what a womble is.
I'll laugh if he says no.
Yeah, well, I told you when we first met that I didn't know that you were going to have an accent, but I think it's funny because anyone watching who are friends of mine know that I know a lot about British history, and I studied in London and I love it. And my one friend who's from there said that I'm the most British American he's ever met. So take that with
I see
what
that.
you do with that what you will.
I see that.
See it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
excellent. Well,
yes.
That was a weird tangent to go on after all the in-depth conversation that we've had, but we've done it now. So before we part ways today, was there anything that you had in your notes or anything that you wanted to share with the group before we disappear? Because I don't want to close it down and have you think, I wish I'd have said this. So now's your chance.
Mm-hmm. Right. I am looking.
You can have
at my notes. Yeah, well, I guess two things. One is I've had like people ask if I'm working on a second book, which at the moment, no. I've started to kind of compile notes, but as it was with Alive, like I think it has to just come from an organic place, and when I feel like that's what I want to do, then I'll do it. I am working on some newer pieces though. I used to on my Instagram film spoken word videos, and I haven't done that in a while, so I'm going to start reincorporating that into my content there, which I'm very excited about. Cool. I also would love to bring Alive into audiobook form. So talking about accessibility, another way for you to connect with the words. That would just also be very gratifying for me with the performance background and just like bringing more of my essence to the work. I think that's kind of where I'm headed with my creativity, is definitely more poetry, but bringing myself more to the forefront of the presentation, which I'm very excited about, and just finding more ways to connect with audiences. So again, thank you so much for this. I love having the opportunity to speak on my work and just kind of have this forward-facing interaction. And yeah, I have a quote, because I'm the queen of quotes, that I had written down that I really felt encapsulates my work, how I feel about artists, how I feel about being alive. And the quote is, "Artists are explorers of our collective interior. They venture into the turbulence of beings that we may recognize ourselves anew. They transform fragility to form, silence to sign, darkness into light." And that's kind of the cover too, the dark and the light. And it's all going to be okay if I can leave that parting note. I think that's what I wanted Alive to stand as a testament to. I think that's what I want my work to stand as a testament to, that we have each other and we'll get through whatever it is we're going through.
Oh, I think that was a lovely ending to a lovely day. So it's a day as if this hadn't been 58 minutes. A lovely time that we've had, and I'm screwing it up. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking your time to come on the show. It's been really nice to get to know you and learn more about your art and how you produce things, and your lovely brain, and the fact that you share these things with everybody. So yeah, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you everyone that joined us today. I still don't know where to look, I think there. Thank you for joining us today. If you are wanting to find out more about Kara's work, I will put the link to your website in the description of the video. So if you're watching
Instagram too.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but website, Instagram, best way to connect with me. It's my name on both. Yes.
Perfect. I'll put those links in the description so you can go and find all of the lovely things. So yeah, thank you again, and I will see you on the other side.
Thank you so much.
Bye.